For a fourth day, they gathered outside a federal detention center in downtown Los Angeles. A wall of the National Guard protecting the building, a wall of the police pushing the protesters back. After a long weekend, the streets of LA were far quieter. Some clashes were replaced with dancing. And yet that didn't alter the approach of Donald Trump.
Some of the things you're reading about in Los Angeles, thank goodness we sent out some wonderful National Guard. They've really helped, and a lot of problems they were having out there.
While many demonstrations had dispersed by late evening, the president announced the deployment of an extra 2,000 federalized National Guard, as well as 700 U.S. Marines. The use of active U.S. military on American soil to quell protests is seen as provocative. For his critics in L.A. and the state of California, this is a president who wants fireworks, not peace.
And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state or away from local government. I don't think that our city should be used for an experiment to see what happens in the nation's second largest city. Well, maybe we can do this to other cities.
As a convoy of Marines headed towards LA, the protests have begun to spread. The National Guard dispersed people in Santa Ana in Orange County. While in Dallas and Austin, Texas, hundreds gathered to protest against raids by immigration officials, standing in solidarity with those who first began protesting in LA. They were met with tear gas.
Oh, that sucked. It's got tear gas.
For President Trump, these protests will not sway him, given he believes he was voted in on a strict immigration policy. But while Americans approve of Trump's deportation of those in the country illegally, the ramping up of ICE raids is what has caused concern, especially given the administration has admitted they are not rounding up those with criminal records.
Is everyone that has been arrested by ICE agents have a criminal record like those you've described?
Absolutely not.
With the streets of LA quieter on Monday and Trump still deploying yet more National Guard, Democrats are accusing the president of spoiling for a fight, in particular with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who Trump even threatened to lock up because of his opposition to the White House. In response, Gavin Newsom wrote on X, "The president just called for the arrest of a sitting governor. This is a day I hoped I would never see. This is an unmistakable step towards authoritarianism." Vice President J.D. Vance replied, "Do your job. That's all we're asking." Newsom responded, "Do your job. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. Rescind the order, return control to California." But the White House is not backing down, with Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, replying to the governor, "When the rioters swarmed, you handed over your streets willingly. You still refuse to arrest and prosecute the arsonists, seditionists, and insurrectionists. This administration is fighting to save the city." Trump both defended his federalization of the National Guard and his belief that Governor Newsom had committed a crime.
It's lucky for the people in Los Angeles and in California that we did what we did. We got it just in time. It's still simmering a little bit, but not very much. Yeah, please.
Have you gotten
What crime has Governor Newsom committed?
A crime has he committed? I think his primary crime is running for governor, because he's done such a bad job. What he's done to that state is like what Biden did to this country. And that's pretty bad. It's the wrong philosophy.
But the fact the streets have remained quiet enforces the belief from Trump's critics that he wants to simply exercise more and more power, and why the state of California is now suing the administration.
Trump and Hegseth jumped from 0 to 60, bypassing law enforcement expertise and evaluation. They threw caution to the wind and sidelined strategy in an unnecessary and inflammatory escalation that only further spurred unrest. Let's be very clear, there was no risk of rebellion, no threat of foreign invasion, no inability for the federal government to enforce federal laws.
But Trump's desire to intervene was not unpredictable. He even spoke about it back in 2023 when he was campaigning for re-election, talking about the need to go over the heads of state authorities to deal with democratic cities.
You look at these cities, our great cities are, New York City is a crime den. Chicago is a crime den. You look at these great cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, you look at what's happening to our country. We cannot let it happen any longer. And one of the other things I'll do Because, you know, you're supposed to not be involved in that. You just have to be asked by the governor or the mayor to come in. The next time, I'm not waiting.
Donald Trump has used his second term to announce emergency after emergency as a strategy to make it easier for him to take decisive action and bypass Congress. He declared one at the southern border, and he also said there was an economic emergency so that he could push through his tariff agenda. The president now sees these protests from LA to San Francisco to Austin and Dallas as a sign of yet another perceived crisis, even if many of his critics and many Americans would argue there is no such emergency. The visuals of these protests are what matters. For Republicans, they see anarchy and Mexican flags, a so-called invasion. For Democrats, this is a peaceful protest and the First Amendment in action. Two interpretations, two different ideas of America.